The moment a man begins to explain himself, he begins to lose. In the court of power, justification is interpreted not as clarity, but as weakness. The mere act of defending your name implies that your name was vulnerable to begin with. The man who justifies confirms suspicion, even when the accusation is baseless. It is not truth that rules perception. It is presentation. And nothing presents more pitifully than the frantic effort to explain. Silence, on the other hand, is not a lack of defense. It is a deliberate stance. It is the language of men who do not flinch in the face of accusations, because they know the crowd fears what it cannot read. Power requires detachment from the opinions of the masses. Once you make yourself dependent on the validation of others, you become a slave to their judgment. The man who stands quietly, who says nothing in the face of slander, radiates control. His silence is louder than any defense, for it suggests that the accusation is beneath him, that engaging would be a waste of time, a stain on his dignity. And in that silence, others begin to wonder, maybe he knows something they don't. Maybe his calm is a signal of deeper power. When you speak, they measure your words. When you remain silent, they measure your presence. Defending yourself is often a disguised plea for acceptance. You appeal to emotion, you hope for fairness, but power is not fair, and no one truly listens to the words of a man who is cornered. They smell desperation, and desperation is not persuasive. It is repulsive. The powerful man does not beg for understanding. He lets the false accusations burn themselves out. Time, not argument, is the true purifier of reputation. The moment you fight back with words, you step into their frame, and once inside, you play by their rules. They own the arena, and you become the entertainment. This is why kings, tyrants, and those who understood dominance often said nothing when accused, not because they were innocent, and not because they were guilty, but because they knew that every word spoken is a thread others can pull. It is not the crime that matters, it is the perception of strength. A man who speaks too much appears uncertain. A man who remains still seems terrifying. The world is not moved by those who cry for justice. It is moved by those who show no fear of injustice. What happens when you don't defend yourself? Your enemies grow impatient. They poke harder, louder, more recklessly. They expose more of their hatred, their envy, their insecurity. You, meanwhile, remain unshaken. The audience begins to shift its gaze from your supposed flaws to the obsessive madness of your accuser. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects their pettiness. You do not stoop to their level because you do not even acknowledge their level exists. You allow them to play their hand fully. Then you strike quietly, powerfully, and without a word. Power is the ability to remain unmoved when others demand movement, to keep your composure when the crowd howls, to appear untouched by the chaos surrounding you. And nothing demonstrates this more than your refusal to defend yourself. It is not cowardice, it is dominance. It is not silence born of weakness. It is silence chosen by strength, because only the man who fears nothing can afford to say nothing. Accusation is not about truth, it's about leverage. The weak do not seek justice. They seek dominance by weaponizing perception. When they cannot overpower you directly, they stab at your image. They understand a deep truth. In the theater of power, it is not necessary to destroy the man, only his reflection in the eyes of others. And so they accuse not to expose you, but to lure you into their trap. They want you to respond. They want to watch you squirm under the weight of their lies. Because once you respond, you validate their narrative. You lend it power by acknowledging it exists. The art of accusation is psychological warfare. It forces you into a position of defense, where you waste energy trying to clear your name. But you must understand, those who throw dirt are rarely clean themselves. They know this, and they bet on the fact that you will try to out-reason them in a world that doesn't run on reason. You will compose long explanations, defend your honor, plead your case before a court that never asked for evidence. And in doing so, you lower yourself. The crowd doesn't remember the facts, they remember who looked shaken. Let them accuse, let them talk. The longer they speak, the more they reveal their desperation. The more they obsess over you, the more obvious their inferiority becomes. And this is the trap they fall into. By trying so hard to tarnish your name, they end up dirtying their own. All you must do is stay still. The enemy who cannot provoke you is an enemy who loses control. Their arrows hit nothing. Their fury turns inward, and their attacks, once sharp, begin to look ridiculous in the absence of your reaction. The mistake most men make is assuming that public opinion can be tamed with truth. But truth has never governed the minds of the many emotion has. And emotion favors the strong, the composed, the unshaken. Accusation is a form of theater. The moment you step on the stage to defend yourself, you become part of the show. But if you refuse to play your role, the performance collapses. Their accusations become noise without meaning, because without your reaction, there is no drama, no rise, no fall. There is something unsettling about a man who does not flinch when his name is dragged. People expect outrage. They expect counterattacks. But when they get silence, they feel disturbed. They begin to ask, what does he know that we don't? What kind of man doesn't even blink when accused? Perhaps he's dangerous. Perhaps he's powerful. That uncertainty becomes your greatest shield. You turn their words into questions that haunt them instead of you. In refusing to respond, you shift the psychological burden back onto the attacker. And yet this strategy is not rooted in passivity. It is rooted in dominance. You are not ignoring the attack because it doesn't matter. You are ignoring it because you know it serves you more to let it grow wild and uncontrolled. The more they talk, the more emotional they become. The more emotional they become, the more mistakes they make. Every word they throw at you is an arrow wasted in the wind. You do not need to stop them. You only need to wait until their quiver is empty and their credibility lies in shreds. It is tempting to clarify, to clean the blood from the sword. But the sword is sharper when stained. Your power grows not when you prove yourself right, but when you show that you don't need to prove anything at all. The accused who walks calmly through the storm becomes myth. The one who yells his innocence becomes memory. Accusation is their weapon. Silence is yours. And in the war for influence, it is not the loudest who win, but the last man standing after the noise has burned itself out. Power is not preserved through defense, it is seized through offense. When you are attacked, the instinct of the common man is to retreat, to explain, to apologize. But apology is submission wrapped in courtesy. It signals regret, it confesses to guilt, and most fatally, it places you below your accuser. Those who understand power do not explain, they strike. The moment an accusation is hurled at you, do not stoop to the level of justification. Pivot, shift the spotlight, drag your enemies into their own fire. Do not answer questions, ask them. Do not clear your name, dirty theirs. The game of power is not about who is right, but who controls the narrative. And narratives are not balanced through fairness, they are dominated by force. If they accuse you of greed, expose their envy. If they question your past, illuminate the shadows in theirs. Don't argue the details, destroy the foundation they stand on. The most powerful counterattack is not the one that responds to the claim, but the one that makes people forget the claim even existed. Redirection is more effective than rebuttal. You turn the public gaze like a sword, and you do it swiftly. Apology is the weapon of those who lack position. It assumes that the crowd seeks the truth, but the crowd hungers not for clarity. They hunger for spectacle, for dominance, for someone to fall. If you apologize, you feed them. You feed their sense of moral superiority. You give them blood, and they will demand more. One apology leads to another until you're drained, reduced to a figure who constantly bends to the wind. The powerful man never bends. He stands still, or he moves forward, never backward. Attack is not always loud. It is not always vulgar. Sometimes it is subtle, a look, a question, a smirk that signals, "I know more than I'm saying." These are psychological weapons. You don't need to raise your voice to crush an opponent. You only need to raise doubt. If someone attempts to frame you, suggest without ever directly saying it that they have motives, that there are things in their past that wouldn't survive the same scrutiny. Plant suspicion and let it grow. The accuser who suddenly finds himself being examined quickly loses his fire. You must never operate within their frame. Once you do, you're reacting, not acting. You're playing by rules they have already written. The only way to win is to flip the game board, redefine the terms, and put them on the defensive. Every question you answer gives them power. Every question you ask takes it away. If the public starts looking at them instead of you, your battle is already won. Their accusation dissolves beneath the weight of their own exposure. It is not cruelty. It is strategy. The battlefield of influence does not reward decency. It rewards ruthlessness masked in grace. The one who offends with elegance, who wounds without shouting, always holds the upper hand. Make it clear that you are not to be trifled with, that those who point fingers at you do so at their own peril. Create a pattern. Those who come for you are never the same afterward. They lose face. They lose momentum. They regret initiating the conflict. This creates an aura of invincibility. People will think twice before dragging your name again. A master of power never lets an insult pass without cost, but he also never responds predictably. Instead of countering with the truth, counter with chaos. Instead of providing evidence, provide pressure. Make the accuser sweat. Let the conversation drift into their weaknesses, their mistakes, their vulnerabilities. Shift the frame so completely that people forget why the debate even started. And when you stand above the wreckage of the discussion, untouched and unmoved, the crowd will not remember what you were accused of. They will only remember that you emerged stronger. The one who never apologizes and never justifies commands more fear than any man who defends with dignity. Reputation is not a mirror that reflects who you are. It is a sword that strikes before you speak. In the realm of power, it is far more important to be perceived as strong than to be actually virtuous. When people fear your name, they do not question your actions. When they respect your presence, they do not demand explanations. A man who has built an aura of strength and mystery does not need to defend himself, because the mere weight of his reputation silences accusations before they take root. Reputation, when crafted with intention, does what words cannot. It protects without effort and attacks without warning. You must never rely on reputation as a shield, for shields are made to absorb blows. Use your reputation as a weapon, something that makes others hesitate, something that makes them tremble at the thought of crossing you. This is why the image you project must always exceed the man behind it. You are not building a record of moral correctness. You are building a myth that no one dares to challenge openly. The more feared your name becomes, the less often you will be forced into the humiliating position of defending yourself. People do not test those who are known to destroy without mercy. To build such a reputation requires consistency and calculation. You must control every detail of how others perceive you. Never show panic. Never display confusion. Never admit to defeat. Your words must carry precision. Your actions must appear deliberate. Let others be ruled by emotion. Your detachment will only add to your legend. If they gossip about your cruelty, let them. If they whisper about your coldness, let them. These are the shadows that gather around power and serve it well. Do not waste time cleaning your image. Let it remain sharp, dark, and untouchable. The world does not admire goodness. It admires dominance cloaked in elegance. Many make the mistake of believing that a clean reputation protects them from attacks. But the more righteous you appear, the more tempting it becomes for others to tear you down. The man who builds his reputation on morality stands on sand. The one who builds it on power stands on stone. Be known as someone whose silence is not passivity but calculation, someone whose approval is rare, whose anger is feared, and whose attention is a reward in itself. That is the kind of reputation that commands obedience without commands. Your image must precede you in every room you enter. Before you say a word, others should already be aware of your weight. The way you walk, the way you look at people, the way you allow or deny access, these are all elements of the persona you project. Never let them see you scrambling to explain or begging to be understood. Every time you clarify, you erode the mystique. Every time you justify, you give away your leverage. It is better to be misjudged and feared than understood and dismissed. Do not concern yourself with being liked. Liked men are easily discarded. The goal is not admiration, it is strategic reverence. You do not want people close, you want them alert. You want them uncertain of what you might do next. And that uncertainty becomes armor. The less they know of your inner thoughts, the harder it becomes to attack you. A man whose mind is a mystery is a fortress no enemy can breach. Let your history speak for you. Let your reputation cast a shadow long before you arrive. Then, when accusations come as they always do, they will be dismissed not because of your innocence, but because no one dares to believe you guilty, not out of faith in your goodness, but fear of your wrath. That is how you turn reputation into a sword that never needs to be drawn. Power does not belong to those who speak the most. It belongs to those who master silence. The man who says little controls the frame of every conversation, because in his silence, others project their fears, their insecurities, and their desires. He becomes a mirror, reflecting nothing yet revealing everything about those who try to provoke him. When someone attacks you, their goal is not to destroy you with truth, but to control your reaction. They want to shake your composure, to prove to the world that your foundation is weak. But when you respond with silence, you rob them of their weapon. You remain immovable, and the attacker begins to crumble under the weight of their own performance. The silent man governs not through noise but through presence. Words are easy to manipulate. Emotion can be faked. But stillness cannot be imitated. It reveals self-possession, calculated patience, and terrifying restraint. The truly powerful never act in haste. They wait. They let the dust settle. They let their enemies scream into the void, unraveling in front of the audience they sought to impress. And then, at the moment of greatest vulnerability, they strike, not with passion, but with precision. Psychological warfare is not about confrontation. It is about control. Control of time, of energy, and of attention. The man who knows how to redirect attention holds more power than the man who merely defends himself. When slander is thrown your way, your response must never be reactive. It must be strategic. You must guide the conversation like a river, gently but firmly turning the current away from yourself and toward a more useful target. If you are accused, point toward a bigger issue. If you are questioned, raise a more disturbing question in return. The goal is never to remove the spotlight entirely. It is to change what the spotlight illuminates. Let your enemies drown in the very attention they sought to weaponize. Redirection is not about lies, it's about structure. You are not erasing the truth. You are shifting its relevance. The crowd cannot focus on everything at once. They are easily distracted, easily swayed. Use this to your advantage. When attacked, don't respond with the truth. Respond with something more interesting, more emotional, more urgent. Create tension elsewhere. Use rumors, use symbols, use conflict if you must. The truth is irrelevant when the mind is overwhelmed by spectacle. People forget the facts, but they remember how they felt. If you control their emotional focus, you control the entire battlefield. This is not cowardice. It is dominance executed with precision. You are not fleeing from conflict. You are choosing the battlefield. You are choosing when to fight, where to fight, and most importantly, how the fight is perceived. The man who baits his enemy into premature attack always holds the higher ground. The man who redirects accusations into a storm of confusion always emerges untouched. His silence is not void. It is full of calculation. His redirection is not evasion, it is assassination without the need for weapons. To master this art, you must learn to observe more than you speak. Speak less than you know. Reveal less than you feel. Train your face to betray nothing. Let your enemies exhaust themselves trying to read you. The more unpredictable you are, the more powerful your silence becomes. They will fear what you might do next. They will imagine your revenge long before it comes. And that fear, that uncertainty, is often more destructive than any physical blow. Your silence becomes a curse that haunts them. Your redirection becomes the fog in which they lose their way. In psychological warfare, the most dangerous man is the one who never reacts as expected. He cannot be predicted, cannot be manipulated, cannot be provoked. He is not seen arguing, not seen flailing for sympathy, not seen clinging to reputation. He is quiet, yet his presence speaks louder than any defense. He is patient, yet his strikes are brutal. He is accused, yet the world soon forgets who accused whom. His enemies fall not because he fought them, but because he let them walk blindly into the traps they set for him. Power is not seized through noise, nor is it preserved through justification. It is won in the shadows by silence, misdirection, and the refusal to kneel to public opinion. The man who never defends himself holds the psychological upper hand. He does not react, he observes. He does not explain, he lets others drown in their own assumptions. His name is not defended. It is enforced by fear, by presence, by an aura too sharp to touch. Every accusation becomes a wasted arrow. Every attack reveals more about the attacker than the target. And every moment he remains silent, the myth grows stronger. Power is a game of perception, and perception is ruled by those who understand how to turn accusations into weapons and attention into traps. To defend is to lower the sword, but to remain still while the world watches, to flip the spotlight, to strike with timing so cold it shatters the nerves of the boldest opponent. That is how influence is secured. The truly powerful do not fight for their name. They shape it like a blade, and in doing so, they remind the world that silence, when mastered, is the loudest form of power.